Quick update on the war in Ukraine. Let's take a look at the situation on the battlefield. Most of the focus continues to be in and around the eastern city of Bakhmut. Wagner forces are leading the charge there, but are increasingly backed by some conventional Russian military elements, to include artillery and air support. Russia continues to make pretty slow but steady progress to the north and south of the city. Their rate of advance has slowed quite a bit over the last week to 10 days, which could be due to a variety of factors. So it's possible that they've hit an area of the Ukrainian-held line that is more substantially defended than other areas. It's also a possibility that the Russian forces involved in this sector are somewhat exhausted. They've been pressing day and night for months now, and armies are made up of people that get emotionally and physically worn down, especially in a chaotic environment like combat. Overall, it doesn't appear to be any shift in the goals from either side when it comes to Bakhmut. Of course, pretty clear that Russia is still intent on surrounding and eventual capture of the city. On the Ukrainian side, most of the news coming out tends to be around reinforcing and holding Bakhmut rather than precipitating any sort of eventual withdrawal. Worth noting, though, that something here could change fast. So just like Russian forces at Kherson, should Ukraine decide to withdraw from Bakhmut, they're not going to be putting that out publicly for days ahead of time. During any sort of retreat or withdrawal, a military is especially vulnerable. So if that decision is made, it's likely we're going to wake up one day to either find it underway or complete with little to no public warning. Now, while most of the attention is focused around Bakhmut, there are two other areas in Ukraine worth keeping an eye on: Avdiivka and Zaporizhzhia. Avdiivka is one of the areas that's really been at the front of this fight from the start. The line of control between Russian-backed separatists and Ukrainian forces before the 2022 invasion was just a few miles east of this city. Now, the line there has held pretty firmly for the last year, but there's a slow Russian push that threatens to encircle any Ukrainian troops still trying to defend the city. The fighting has picked up there in recent weeks with continued Russian strikes and infantry assaults. There's not a ton of news coming out of Ukraine from that sector, at least not compared with Bakhmut. But it's worth watching as we can see this pocket developing, and generally speaking, that's not a good thing in war. Then there's Zaporizhzhia. This is an area where the lines haven't shifted much at all as of late, but it is top of mind in terms of a potential location for a future Ukrainian counteroffensive. There's an argument that Ukrainian thrust through the lines here, if successful, could potentially split the Russian forces generally between the Donbass and Crimea. In turn, there's been a lot of satellite imagery showing that Russia is building up their defensive positions in this area. And last week, there was a report of a Ukrainian probe against some of these locations. As the dust was settling out from this event, I saw some pretty quick to call this a failed offensive, but it's looking more and more like this was a reconnaissance and force type move. Something that has to be big enough to draw fire, but small enough to where if it's turned back or completely destroyed, it's not too big of an overall loss. There's a lot of talk about when and where we can expect to see spring offensives from the two sides here. Technically, this type of action by the Ukrainians, the reconnaissance and force, is something that can be used to determine weak points ahead of an attack in that exact location, or as a diversion to pull Russian resources away from elsewhere. It's impossible to make the correct determination with this little bit of information we have, but it'll be interesting to see how or if this plays in any sort of Ukrainian actions in the coming weeks. But that's all I got for now. Hope your week is off to a good start. We'll see y'all next time.